bet on yourself and invest in yourself. I don't think there's a better investment anyone can make in the world than in themselves. Keep your head down, keep investing in yourself. It is absolutely the best investment you can make, far and away, period.
When you go through this life, it's a world that's ever trying to change you.
Imagine what you could accomplish if you weren't afraid to fail.
But I would say focus on progress, not perfection.
You don't need to know every step of the way of how you're going to get there. You're going to get there.
Now that's a success story.
Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Success Stories. I am Steve Cross, the host, and today I have with me Mitch Stein, the co-founder and principal of Arena Private Wealth. Mitch, thanks for being on with us today.
Appreciate it, Steve. I appreciate your interest and the opportunity to have this conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, excellent. I know you're busy, so I appreciate taking the time out to share your story. But let's dive in. I want to start you out where I start everybody else out. If you've heard some episodes or watched some, you kind of know where this is going. But when you think back about your career, your professional journey, and your success stories, that frame, where does it begin for you?
It begins for me. I guess I'm what I look at the world of entrepreneurship in two phases. You're either kind of born into it and it's just innately in you, or you're like I am and you're what I'd call a later in life or a late stage entrepreneur. While I exhibited some traits of entrepreneurship, growing up, taking on odd jobs or tasks and always looking for ways to make a buck or so. I went a very corporate route out of college. I was a history major at the University of Michigan, and not typically your clear path to a career in finance and private wealth.
Yeah, right,
So
yeah.
I always get a kick out of telling clients and prospects and folks I interact with that I'm a history major at Michigan. It's something I take a great deal of pride in. But I went and worked for some large corporations, a large brokerage firm, a bank, and it was about 15 years into my career that I developed this interest in pursuing an entrepreneurial path and starting my own firm and going independent and partnering with some former colleagues to build a platform and this vision of a modern private wealth firm that we're creating here at Arena. So it took me about a 15-year career and really learning the business and also learning that there was a better path for me and that there was a better opportunity for clients and ways that we could leverage a lot of the skills and leverage a lot of the platform and opportunities that a lot of these large firms represent and can bring clients, but also eliminate some of the conflicts of interest and some of the aspects of working at these firms that didn't allow me to be as objective as I wanted and pursue this. So, I'm the later in life entrepreneur. I wouldn't say it was a disdain or, I didn't grow to totally loathe corporate America, but I knew that it was not for me and that there was an alternative path.
Gotcha. Yeah. I knew a couple years in, I'm like, this is not where I'm going to be at. Corporate America, it was just sheer torture for me. Just my personality. Yeah.
I get it. Look, it's a necessary evil for some,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and I'm not going to sit here and badmouth any firms, and they're great firms, and there's a lot of great employees at these firms, and they do great work. It was not the right path for me. In simplest forms, and to summarize it, I got sick of hearing no to good ideas, and that's not part of my world anymore. And it's quite refreshing, and I think clients feel and enjoy that experience as well.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So later on in life, during your career and having those roadblocks or getting told those no's, was it something in the back of your head of like, I just need to do my own thing? Or was it like very at the end, like final stage of last year or two where you're like, all right, this is fed up. I need to start thinking somewhere else. Or did it build over time?
It's a great question. It definitely built over time because look, coming out as a 22-year-old undergraduate history degree, I don't think you're really ready to set the world on fire in the world of finance. So I owe a great deal of any success I've had to what I learned and to what I experienced at those firms. And unfortunately, Wall Street has seen the abandonment of these great training programs. I caught the very tail end of these legacy training programs where firms committed a great deal of resources to recruiting history majors from the University of Michigan to train them, teach them the business, be patient with them, and hope that they panned out and made it. So there were a lot of benefits from being at these large organizations. Over time, as my business grew, as my business evolved, I developed other interests. It's where I realized that this was maybe not the best path and that there were alternative paths for someone with my inclinations, areas of interest, and the ways that I wanted to work with clients. So it probably was a build over the last 5 years or so of my 15 years in corporate America that I not only had the confidence that I could make this
Mm,
transition with
key.
a minimal degree of risk, in my opinion. I had enough time in and credibility that clients would follow me, believe what I had to say, and care about what I was doing. So definitely there needed to be some amount of time in that paired with the interest. I was not in a position probably to do it much earlier in my career. I did it about 35 years old. Much sooner than that might have been premature. Much later than that, and I might have lost my sanity. So
Yeah.
it was the convergence of those. The timing was just right, and so I went for it.
Yeah. In your industry, you kind of have to treat your own book of business as a business, right? So you're kind of am I is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And there's a major discrepancy when in working at certain firms over who truly is the owner of that
Owner,
business,
yeah.
the practitioner or the firm. And the reality is it's very gray, and you're never really probably the true owner of that business until you're doing it on your own independent platform now. And that was something that was important to me. Not only to have the autonomy and to control the narrative and build the platform and the model that I thought made the most sense for clients, and to bring certain services and platform capabilities and access to clients. I needed this independence in order to do that. But there's also a great deal of pride that you can have in business. It is an asset of yours. And clients, particularly those fellow entrepreneurs, there's a wonderful kinship. And I think a mutual respect, relatability, and connectivity that has been really unique and something that I didn't quite anticipate that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah. Yeah, because once you're an entrepreneur, you understand, you have the empathy for what everyone else is going through or has gone through, because you understand it a little bit more. And if we
Yeah.
talked a little bit prior to this, if there's any way that I can help another entrepreneur, small business owner, or somebody with a connection or just like a hint or a little bit helpful, like you probably your business is probably largely built on that, right? Because that's your audience, that's who you work with, right? For the most part.
There there's that kinship for sure. And
Yeah.
there's that wanting to support someone who bets on themselves, who takes maybe the harder or more contrarian path, who doesn't go the easy route, that you want to get behind and rally behind and support. Absolutely. So it's I always love meeting other entrepreneurs, regardless of what phase they're at, regardless of industry. It always leads to interesting conversation, and hopefully, and more often than not, I can also learn something from those exchanges.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All you gotta do is listen, right? That's the key. Everybody has something good to say, but a lot of us,
Yes.
we gotta make sure we're active listening. So take me back to that decision of jumping ship, starting your own thing. You have a couple co-founders that you talked about. Where did that conversation begin? Did you start with the idea and you brought it to them? Was it just over drinks and a dinner, or how did that begin? Where did this idea begin?
Yeah. I went first, um, independent of any conversation with them. It was for a myriad of reasons. It was the right time for me.
Mhm.
Um, but my two co-founders, Jason Tosh and Ryan Watts, who are Cleveland, or pardon me, Chicago and Columbus based. We're all former colleagues in Chicago, working at a bank in their downtown region, and we were sort of uh, the young up and comers in their downtown location. And we worked together for a decade, shared a lot of ideas, shared visions, recognized that we had a lot of similarities. And when I made this move, I immediately started dripping on them and trying to convince them to come join me. It took about 2 years. This was under a
Wow.
prior platform, so we ended up joining there initially, but then a few years ago, started Arena, as the three co-founders. There was a little step in between to get to this point. But immediately was dripping on them for a multitude of reasons. One, it was important to me to establish a Chicago presence. I had already moved back to Cleveland,
Mm,
but had spent the first decade plus of my career in Chicago. I had a large Chicago client base. There was a lot of opportunity in Chicago. So it was really important and strategic to me to have a flag planted in Chicago and boots on the ground, but I didn't want to
for
do it
sure.
with just anybody. I had two former colleagues that I knew and trusted and who were the absolute perfect fit and the type of partners that I wanted to build something with. So it took 2 years, but we were finally able to do it. They took a tremendous leap of faith to join and do this, and then the business had some evolutions, and we've arrived at this final destination of Arena, and it's been so far so good, and we're gonna keep going.
Great, great. Take me through before, I guess, back up a little bit further when you said you were the first one to jump ship and or to go out. That evaluation, that decision model that you were kind of working through. Take me through the trade-offs, the risks, what all you had to evaluate, especially your book of business. You're hoping, right? They're going to come with you. You're trying to get them to come with you if you're going to do it, but at the end of the day, you don't know, right?
It's terrifying. You spend 15. I mean, you spend 15. Okay, so you spend 15 years building a business. It's it's paying you good wages. You're comfortable. You've
Yeah.
got um 3 young kids under 6 years old at the time.
Oh, geez, yes.
Um and mounting bills and responsibilities and liabilities. And for me, I looked at it and first it was just the decision to leave. But then ultimately it comes down to, all right, there's a lot of landing spots. What's the right landing spot? And I think that was
Mm,
the critical piece. The decision to leave was fairly easy. Um, but it just, I looked at it, I said, look, I could do this for 30 more years and provide, have a great life, retire at a reasonable age, retire comfortably. I could do that. But all I kept thinking about is 65-year-old Mitch looking back at his career and his life and it just being a lot of regret. What could have been, what could we have done? What could we have accomplished? And so the decision to leave was a no-brainer. I knew it was time. But then it and I was confident that I'd have enough clients follow that the risk was mitigated to a large
mhm.
degree. But then the big question was, and this took me the better part of 3 years, is where's the landing spot? And I talked to everybody imaginable. I looked at large wirehouses, brokerage firms, some of these regional firms. I talked to a lot of other independent firms, and um, at the end of the day, it was really growing out on your own, and doing my own thing that was of most interest. It was funny in Cleveland, in particular. What I noticed is there were a lot of firms that recognized the need for and interest in young talent. But what was harder for them to do was to figure out how to articulate or figure out how to integrate that young talent into their business.
Mm,
So they recognized the need for it, but it wasn't really clear where that talent would fit. And that became a roadblock. And why I ultimately didn't join another firm or another team. And again, it was also just a ultimate vision of what could be built that I saw a void in the marketplace and a tremendous opportunity, particularly in our footprint of Cleveland, Columbus, and Chicago, this upper Midwest footprint that that I felt was very ripe for disruption and innovation, and decided, you know what, let's just let's just go for it, because the fear of regret down the road so much outweighed any fear of failure.
yeah.
And those scales were so imbalanced that it really wasn't a hard decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I love hearing people talk through that decision making process. And it's not a lot of people think well, I assume a lot of people think it's like a couple days, a week, maybe it's a month-long process. But like you just described, like this can be years, right? To
Yes.
evaluate.
It's
And probably in a lot of cases should be a longer timeline to make that happen.
Yeah, it took a long time, but it was a large enough decision with real consequences if it went wrong. Um, again, you spend 15 years building a business and then you hand someone a piece of paper and you're back at zero. and
Yeah.
need to go get and retain that business. So major consequences, serious decision. It should take a lot of time, um, but it's ultimately, again, it was. There's something about, I think, being a late stage entrepreneur, if you will, as I call it, um, that makes you particularly dangerous, and in many respects, I think, a much higher degree of success, because you're just empowered
Mm.
with a lot of knowledge and experience, and the risks that you're taking and what you might be pursuing, you do have the benefit of time and calculation, and to pursue entrepreneurship while having a steady paycheck and while having the luxury of a job. And so that is where I think this late stage entrepreneur has certain advantages going for them, where the right out of college or bypassing college, right, the teenage entrepreneur has a much harder path, frankly. So that was one advantage that I certainly had, I think, just with being armed with knowledge, being armed with, frankly, just a paycheck from a regional bank that gave me
Yeah,
a
a security
3 year
blanket.
one runway to ramp this up, do my due diligence, feel this out, and then decide to pursue it. So the most difficult part, frankly, was when I had mentally checked out 3 years prior to ultimately doing this, was being in this 3 year holding pattern where
Mm.
my business wasn't growing. I wasn't really interested or inclined to try to grow it if I knew that I was leaving and had one foot out the door. And I had just also lost a lot of conviction in my story. So there was a 3 year period of this searching where my business was really at a standstill. And it is what it is. But
Yeah.
that was the one downside of this long drawn out process.
But speaking of that downside, when you made the jump, what was something? And this is called success stories, so I don't want to focus on failures, but we've all had failures along the way. Just as long as you don't treat that failure as the roadblock, right? It's just it's a fork in the road where you have to overcome. What was something that you weren't ready for or you didn't anticipate?
What I didn't anticipate was some of my clients not necessarily having the enthusiasm behind my move that I did, or sharing in that urgency. When I left a legacy partnership and a long term assistant
Hmm.
behind. And Laura was more than an assistant. Laura was a critical member of our team, who had actually, this was something I had underappreciated, is that many of these clients um, had actually grown and developed a much deeper and better relationship with Laura than with me. And they were calling Laura and interacting with Laura probably much more than I even realized.
Mm.
And so when I left, I thought that a lot of my clients would share in the rah rah and want to be part of this journey. But the reality is a very capable and talented team that my clients knew well was left behind. And status quo wasn't as bad to the clients as it was for me. So there were some disappointments in clients that I thought that I had really great relationships with, and I had sort of checked off as like a very high probability follow that did not follow. And that was eye opening to me in many respects. The overall follow and success rate was good. It's not exactly what I thought it would be, and there were
Hmm.
definitely some surprises that stung. Um, but that that's business. As
Yeah.
you hear all the time, it's just business. um,
Yeah.
so you have to not take that personally. I'm completely desensitized to the word no. I hear it a lot. And it's my job in many respects to hear no, particularly when vetting and looking at opportunities on behalf of our clients. It's my job to say no, and I hear no a lot. And so, but yeah, that was definitely eye opening to me, and made me. It was just good perspective, and
Hmm.
so I was definitely probably hurt by the fact that I was going rogue and out on my own, leaving a very capable, talented, and well liked team behind that was there for my clients. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that was
How did that impact or affect how you do business today? Do you still have an assistant? Do you stay deeper ingrained with the relationships? Can you talk through how
So
that kind of molded you
maybe
here?
maybe subconsciously it's why I don't have an assistant.
I was going to say either you don't or next year you recruited Laura to come with you, right?
uh, I could never. There was no chance of getting Laura. She has a wonderful situation with my former partner, and we've remained close and in contact. Um, Replicating Laura would have been damn near impossible, very
Yeah.
difficult. Um, Early on, it was I didn't have an admin because it just wasn't in the budget. And what I realized is a lot of Laura's time um, was wrapped up in bank rigmarole and processes and just, in my opinion, silliness that is not part of my world today.
Mm,
So it was a combination of not only an admin simply just not being in the budget right away, but also I didn't think that I had enough work for this person to keep them busy for more than a few hours a week. So it wasn't a need. Now, as the business has grown and we've seen wonderful growth here, and that's a good thing. Obviously, there it introduces more complexities. We have bolstered up our staff since, and in recent years we're now 11 people and still growing. We were only 3 people 18 months ago. Um, so that
okay.
need for staff and support definitely showed its face. But yeah, for from the first 5+ years of this journey, um, it was just me. I told myself, you know what, I need to I need to probably pawn less stuff off on someone else and have better ownership and connectivity with these relationships that I so deeply value.
Right.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
that was something I learned and did not anticipate. If I think of all of the surprises that I had,
Yeah.
that was the big one.
Makes sense. Makes sense. How do you learning from that? My mind always goes to scale, right? How do you now? I'm not sure where your goals are at or where you guys are trying to grow to, but how do you not misstep again or delegate and still scale? Because you're only one person. You only have so much time. You can't just scale yourself. Do you have a plan in place or ideas or
Yeah.
philosophy for that? It's a tough one. I know you probably weren't ready
Yes.
for it, but
Yes. Any ideas would be welcome. we just, we actually, I was just on the phone late last night with one of my partners talking about just this fact. So you're spot on. Um, One thing that we're trying to be mindful of is we don't want to grow for growth's sake.
Mm,
We don't want to just get big. We want to grow
yep,
thoughtfully. We want to grow strategically. Yet we've been presented with and have been fortunate to have a lot of great growth and successes and growth opportunities. So one thing we're trying to be very mindful of is as we grow, is we need to not let this get away from us. As we all are wearing multiple hats, getting pulled in a lot of different directions, and with all this growth, whether it's new clients and new relationships, new business verticals, new partners in the business, new employees, it all adds complexity. And that's what we're dealing with right now. We're at this inflection point where we've seen a lot of this growth, both by headcount and assets and clients and new lines of business, frankly, that it's kind of taken a step back to digest it and not let this get away from you. And so we are working at getting some of these systems and processes in place while on one part, the idea of mirroring and looking like any of the institutions that we came from.
yeah,
And
I bet, I bet.
we're trying to avoid it at all costs. We do
Yeah,
recognize that like some degree of institutionalization
balancing.
is necessary. So the growing pains, right? We are that is what we are experiencing right now. The good news is I don't think it's being felt by clients and partners. It's internal and it's more something that we're proactively addressing rather than reactively
Yeah,
addressing.
it's huge.
But we see it and we feel it. And if you ask me what keeps me up at night, it's not markets. It's not what's happening in Washington. It's not a lot of some of this background noise. It's thoughtfully dealing with our own growth and vision and go forward initiatives for the business.
Yeah, yeah. Intentional growth rather than just haphazard chaos of just let's grow, as long as the arrow is pointing in the right direction. It's a huge misstep for a lot of companies growing.
Yeah, one
And
thing that my sorry to cut you off, Steve. One
no,
one
it's just a
thing
mature standpoint that most people don't know until they go through it once already. So it's interesting that you're
we're trying to be
forethought.
thoughtful. We have the benefit of a lot of mentors in this business, folks who have been through this that we look to for advice and guidance and perspective and frankly just help. So one thing that we did recently, my co-founders and I, is we strategically removed ourselves out of some of the daily operations for our various business verticals. So the 30,000-foot view of Arena, without getting too detailed, is a modern private wealth firm with three integrated verticals. So we have our traditional wealth that looks very much like what you would expect a wealth management firm to look like. That is planning, portfolio management, estate planning, tax planning, philanthropic planning, etc. But then we have our capital markets group and our alternative investments group. And these are the areas where we're really differentiating ourselves and really being active participants in markets rather than passive allocators. And this is really the secret sauce, if you will, and where we're really trying to innovate and lead within our space. But with these three integrated verticals, we now have lines of head of each business line in place so that Ryan, Jason, and I can function on an enterprise level, be removed from some of the day-to-day operational behind the scenes minutia, but still very important tasks, and focus on this enterprise level. And we can focus our time on where it's needed, where our interest lies, et cetera, and know that a lot of the day-to-day tasks and decision making and each line of business is being covered by very capable heads of those lines of business that we have the utmost trust in their abilities to run that. And so that's been something that's been really helpful for us from a capacity standpoint. And so that we can focus our time and efforts on what not only we're most interested in, but what can be most beneficial to the entire group. You're right, a rising tide lifts all ships. So I talk a lot of time with the team about we need to all focus on our best and highest use for the organization. And how can we be spending our time on naturally, that's probably going to be what we're most interested in and where we're inclined to want to be spending our time. And if we can all do that, uh, this will become a better place for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Highest and best use. I love it. Yep. Just making sure that what I'm working on right now is the most impactful I can be for my business and or most impactful for the people that are working with me in the business. Because
Yes,
not
you're
that
right.
things aren't important, but it's just you can be more impactful in a different place.
My clients don't want me placing trades, sending wires, inputting data into their financial plan.
Yeah.
They want me out developing relationships, thinking big strategic partnership opportunities so that I can procure and source the next great investment opportunity for them. Right, that's going to be far more impactful than me getting caught up in some of the daily tasks around the business. So it benefits everybody. At the end of the day, it benefits clients and investors the most, but also just the rest of the team here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, you kind of gave a good summary of Arena and what all you guys do, but um, what's next for you guys? What does growth look like for you guys here next stage this year, next couple years? What are you guys trying to do, and how does that how are you
Sure.
attacking that?
So naturally, we have from these verticals, we've developed kind of a two client segments, if you will. We have our core client base. These are the RA, the registered investment advisor, the wealth clients, if you will, who are doing everything with us, the planning, the portfolio management. The majority of these families, we have the lion's share of their wealth, and we're really their financial quarterback, right? And doing the planning. And that's a very much high net worth client base, individuals and families. Alongside that, though, through a lot of our alternative investment initiatives, which are our funds, we invest in private equity, real estate,
Hmm.
infrastructure, VC. We do also several direct and co-investment deals within that alternatives business. That has attracted a large and growing LP base. These are ultra high net worth clients, family offices, institutions, even a sovereign wealth fund that have invested in one or multiple of our deals within our alternative investment world. And those folks are really now looking for deal flow and for access. And this is representative of hundreds of billions of dollars of assets over there that now have the expectation of us continuing to source and bring differentiated, unique, and off-market opportunities to them. So where our problem lies is I'm confident that for the right opportunity, we can go raise the capital and find the money.
Mm,
It's more now about focusing on sourcing and making sure that we are bringing high quality, highly vetted opportunities to
yeah.
folks that are interesting and different. Our most recent transaction, and it was a real watershed moment for our firm, is we stepped into a leadership role and we led the Series B round for a semiconductor company. They make an AI inference chip. Positron AI is the name of the company. And we led a $230 million round that valued the company at over $1 billion. We were $40 million of that, the largest check in the deal. And this was a new type of transaction for us, and one that was a really, really great experience. We're hopeful and confident it'll be a great outcome for our investors. But in the aftermath of that role, and there really had not been an RIA prior to us who had led a round before of that significance. So it's kind of a new industry precedent.
Hmm.
And there's been some interest in us and our story as a result of that. And what's happened is there's now been a lot of inbound interest in Arena and what we're doing and our storytelling as this new alternative type of capital partner that can be really appealing to both founders and LPs and our involvement in capital formation. So what's happening is our network is opening up in a world that once seemed very distant and far and inaccessible. We now feel like we have a seat at the table. Now, maybe it's a tiny seat at the kiddie table, but we have a seat at the table and are getting involved in conversations and learning about opportunities and developing and building relationships that will hopefully lead to the sourcing of our next, again, unique and differentiated opportunities to bring to our investors. So when you talk about growth, it's continuing to play in this space. We're never going to lose focus and take our eye off the ball. The core business is and always will be wealth and wealth management. But what many of our investors are looking for is this type of deal flow and access, because what's happened in private wealth in the last decade is there's been this convergence of two trends, and it's increased client interest in these types of alternative opportunities, but then also increased access, because a lot of the alternative asset managers have realized and targeted private wealth as this next frontier and the new dry powder that they can go after, right? So it's been efforts by the large alternative asset managers to build out and develop products, platforms, access points for high net worth investors. And so you have this unprecedented amount of access, and a lot of firms have done a great job of bridging that gap and gaining access and in some capacity. We're focused on closing that gap and not just being an allocator, but really, like I said earlier, being an active participant. So it's going to continue to evolve around finding these opportunities, sourcing these opportunities, and telling this story as this new type of capital partner for founders.
Yeah, I love the model because normally you
Okay.
have, like myself, basically you're de-siloing my investments, right? And my wealth.
Look, yes, you have to believe in alternative investments as an asset class. And
Yeah.
if you, because I'm a history major, I'm obligated to do this. I can give a 25, 30-second history lesson here on how we arrived at this point. But for decades, the private wealth industry has been enamored with what I'll call the Yale model. Yale and many other leading endowments and institutions have been the poster children for portfolio management and performance. They are allocating historically upwards of 50% of their portfolios to alternative investments. And if you look at the
Wow.
last 20 years, Yale's endowment has outperformed your average 70-30 balanced portfolio by over 4% a year. And it's done so taking on a lot less risk. It first comes, you have to believe in alternatives as a relevant asset class that makes sense
Yeah.
for clients, which we very much do. So if you believe and have the conviction that it's this relevant asset class and it should represent 15 to 30% of your portfolio, that's the first step. But then you have to ask yourself, okay, if this is going to be the case, how do we then go and get clients this access, and what are the best ways to access? And that is what we are trying to do here.
Yeah. And that's a unique skill of having the analytical side for the investment and making sure that you are doing right for your client. But then it's almost like a social aspect to it on the other side of when you talk about having a seat at the table, but making those connections, making sure you're curating and developing those relationships so that way you're still involved in the conversations in the future, right?
Uh, Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. You you understand our business very well. Yeah, it is, and so for us, that's where it becomes this balancing act, and why
Yeah,
we've needed to bolster our headcount here, because we can't take our eye off
I
the
can
ball.
imagine.
We we can't neglect our clients. We can't have a hiccup in service and client experience, and that's something that is always top of mind. That is our guiding principle, right? And
Yeah.
but at the same time, our clients want us out there um, doing this and going and sourcing and finding opportunities and developing the right types of relationships to bring truly unique and interesting access.
Yeah.
So it's
It's amazing.
it's a balancing act. It keeps us very busy, but
Yeah,
it's
I
it's
can
fun. We're
imagine.
having fun. We're having fun. Look, I wouldn't say that we invented the idea of bringing direct access to clients. Um, what I would say though is we have been early adapters, and we intend to be leaders and innovators in this movement.
It's
So
enlightening. It's enlightening.
it's fun.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's fun to do. It's fun to do it out of Cleveland, Ohio, and Chicago, and Columbus, and out of the Upper
Yeah.
Midwest. And this whole idea of connecting um, our footprint to opportunities that you typically wouldn't see and have access to here. So we're
Yeah.
getting a great joy, but it goes both ways, connecting Midwestern capital to these opportunities, but then also bringing coastal capital into Midwestern opportunities.
Yeah.
So it goes both ways, and for years it's been very siloed. We're hoping that that will not be the case.
Break those down. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What are some, what are some, normally I speak about entrepreneurship here, and get some, but I want to start at a different place. Our audience, obviously, they're not all wealthy. Some are startups, different phases like we talked about. What is, a guiding principle or, some advice, generic, obviously, because you can't speak about specifics, for our audience when it comes to your space and investing in wealth management? What are some common mistakes that you see? And I'm sure you can fire these off, but just some hints and some words of advice for people.
Yeah, look, I am a believer in the benefit of seeking out professional help. A lot of folks are do-it-yourselfers and can do a fine job and do a great job. But I think there is a lot of benefit into finding a trusted partner with a solid platform who can help guide you and maybe prevent you from making some mistakes that investors will typically make. One thing I always tell clients, and this has nothing to do with any sort of advice, but I always tell clients one benefit of working with me, and this is not unique to me, this is an advisor, is that I will never be emotional about your money. I care deeply about you. I care deeply about your success and your well being, and I care about your money, but I'll never be emotional about it. And the number one thing that investors will get in their own way is they're driven by fear and greed, and it can force you to make irrational or emotional
Hmm.
decisions that ultimately are going to be more detrimental often than helpful. Maybe you're selling into a sell off because of panic, and then you're buying at highs, and you're doing the inverse of what we know to be proven prudent long-term um, patterns. So I think there's definitely a benefit to seeking out some guidance and some help and working with a professional. Um, that is one thing that I do have a lot of belief and conviction in. I also would say that it is, there's a lot of buzz out there right now, and some fed. You see a lot of these huge AI names that are at these wild valuations, and a lot of people
Yeah.
are caught up. It's if a company's valued at $900 billion and is pre-revenue, that's
Yeah.
maybe,
Right.
like, I don't know, maybe there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. There's a lot of good opportunities out there. There's a lot of great ways to make money. I would just say if something is really hot and trendy and a lot of money's following it, maybe it's not always a good time to be getting involved in something. And to not but I also think that a lot of investors unfortunately can get really caught up in what I call background noise and headlines and headline risk. And there's all sorts of really compelling data and charts and that can show that oftentimes for long-term investors in particular, your biggest risk is not what you think it is. Your biggest risk is simply not being invested and not being in the market. Um, Long-term over time, it will be your friend. Um, and and markets, one of my favorite Wall Street quotes ever is markets can remain irrational far longer than investors can remain solvent. So I do not believe in market timing, and I think that the market over time will be your friend. So just get in it and be involved.
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. What about, I appreciate that because that's not our normal script of getting industry specific,
Sure. Sure.
um, but I think with our audience, I think it's some real value that you can provide there of some expert
Yeah.
advice
But
or
to
some
frankly,
guidance, not
you
advice.
know, to an entrepreneur, from one entrepreneur to others, bet on yourself and invest in yourself. I don't think there's a better investment anyone can make in the world than in themselves. So I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who didn't have the luxury of smoothly transition into entrepreneurship like I did, who are
Yeah.
bootstrapping themselves and who may feel behind or who may feel like they don't have enough to show financially for what they've done or accomplished or for how long they've been working or what their experience is. And I would just say, keep your head down, keep betting on yourself, keep investing in yourself. It is absolutely the best investment you can make, far and away, period. Better than any hot stock tip you're going to get from Jim
I'm
Cramer.
with you. I'm with you. I got a couple buddies
Yeah.
that are business owners or high level guys, and it's the one common theme. Whenever I ask them, who are you going to bet on? You can guarantee it's always going to be me because I'm going to bet on myself every single time, in any
Yes.
scenario, because that's who I trust and that's who I can lean on. So, yeah, I agree with you a
Yes.
thousand
And
percent. But I've never heard it from that angle, and I love that.
yeah, and if you're someone who like I was, who's at a comfortable, cushy corporation who likes the comfort of a guarantee, I think you need to ask yourself and think long and hard, what does that guarantee and comfort actually cost you? And it may not make you feel so comfortable anymore.
Yeah. Yes. Back to the script a little bit.
It's expensive.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
What about words of advice for entrepreneurs, specifically like outside of your space, but just um, things that you have come to learn, things that you knew beforehand that set you up for success? What words of wisdom can you impart on the audience?
Try as often as you can to be the dumbest person in the room. Find yourselves good mentors, trusted trusted peers. Um, Frankly, a friend group. One thing that my friend group and I talk about a lot and often is many of us are entrepreneurs or business owners or doing very interesting things within our own fields, and we push each other, we challenge each other, we motivate each other, and it's really productive, and it's really rewarding and fulfilling. And I think a lot of us, we do whatever we can to prop up each other's businesses and support each other, but we also, I think, like I said, inspire and motivate one another. So I would say just surround yourself with great mentors, great friends, people that can be supportive. but also be receptive and open to ideas and feedback. I think a lot of entrepreneurs can get in their own way with being stubborn and thinking they know everything. I think the greatest thing you can do for yourself is to listen and to try to take as much in and become a real student of your industry and talk to others. I
Love
think
it.
is important. I had the benefit of a lot of great and still do have a lot of great mentors and a lot of people that I look up to in my business and and try to be a student of my industry to both learn where directionally do I want to head. Um, but I think also just as important as knowing where you want to go is also knowing where you don't want to go and what you want to avoid. And that only comes with seeking out that knowledge and that information and having a lot of conversations and learning about a lot of your competitors, what they're doing, what they're up to, and again having those sounding boards I think is critically important.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, dropping some dimes here today. This has been such a great episode, man. I love it. I
I,
love it. Love it.
I'm glad to help. Again, I just appreciate the opportunity that someone wants to talk to me. So,
Mitch, where can people learn more about you and Arena?
yeah, look, our website is arenapw.io. You can find me on LinkedIn and would be happy to chat with anyone about our business, about entrepreneurship in general. And again, appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, it's been great. It's been great. I know people are going to get a lot out of this one. I appreciate everything that you've been telling. And I know well, I think it's kind of a delicate matter of you giving any type of advice, right, in your guys' industry and compliance and stuff like that. So I feel like you almost have to water it down a little bit or be careful how you say
Yeah,
things, right?
there's some pretty tight marketing and advertising rules. I try to
Yeah.
get well coached by compliance so that after conversations like this, I don't get a nasty call from anybody.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You
um,
want to stay away from them.
yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. One thing I would also say, um, if your audience is a northeastern Ohio audience and a greater Cleveland sort of audience, one thing that I would tell people too, and this is something I believe very strongly in because I have a fascination with Clevelanders doing non-traditionally Cleveland things, right? And get rid of the mindset that Cleveland doesn't have the appetite for this, or Cleveland can't support this, or this can't be done. I think that's something that has held back entrepreneurship in this region far too long. But I think there's a tremendous amount of next gen young talent here that just haven't had enough people showing them these paths. And while we've made great strides in the last decade plus, and there's some great groups doing a lot of really great things here from an entrepreneurship standpoint, and the VC community has grown. Um, I think it's only just getting started. So I think that the future here in Cleveland is bright, but I would advise people if you're asking for other nuggets of wisdom is don't think that you can't do this here in Cleveland.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Mitch, thanks so much for being on today and spreading some words and man, just educating everybody. It's great. Myself more than anybody. I feel like I'm getting so much out of this episode in the relationship, and it's been a pleasure meeting you. I appreciate you being on. Thank you so much for telling a little bit about your story, the ups and downs, and pulling back the curtain a little bit. And continued success and good luck disrupting the market and where you guys are at. Sounds like you're well on your way of doing that. So thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Enjoy the conversation.
Yep. Yep. Everybody, go find Mitch on LinkedIn. Follow Arena. Take a look at what they're up to and how they can help you out, and reach out to him for any type of advice, guidance. It seems like he's very open to helping people out. So stick around. More content to come. Subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.